Hey everybody, Dost Isms episode 30. Telling a lot today, so I'm pretty tired, but we're in here. This one I'm going to read from a deed of acknowledgement. That's typically what this is called. Is a deed of pledge of industrial property rights, bond with an equity mortgage. This is starts out in the United States. It has to do with bond. I'm not going to tell you what the patents are or anything. I'm just going to say it's medical research. I don't want to confuse you. So this is say it's medical research. Starts out in the United States and kind of jumps between the United States and England and Australia. And what I want you to listen here is you got to remember something. Patents are considered art, and just like a painting, just like a painter can paint whatever he wants, right? He can sculpt whatever he wants. It's the same thing with a patent. A patent is conjured from the mind of an individual or several individuals. So it's considered art. So when we talk about so codes and statutes really don't apply here, even though they do, but it's the way that the words are used and the meaning of words. So what I want you to do when I'm reading this to you, think about that all caps, that artificial person. Think of it as a body, even though it's not a body because it doesn't have it can't be a body. It has no material form. I mean, it has form, but it has no matter, um, like my flesh and blood here. But let's just read this to you and just kind of think about. Just remember, we're talking about an old body and a new body, going into a new body. So a spirit or a soul going into a new body. And just read it to you and just see if you can kind of grasp what's going on here with this. If you can grasp the metaphysics and the spirituality of this. But remember, you gotta keep this, always gotta remember there's two people we're talking about, the flesh and blood person and the artificial person. So anyhow, let's go through this here real quick. So this has to do with this vested rights. Vested rights. Now, what we're talking about here is vested rights means any legal or equitable estate or interest, whether present or future, and whether vested or contingent, in real or personal property and rights of any description as defined in the Repeal Act. Now, remember, we're talking Australian English law here, okay? Which doesn't really matter because it's not U.S. law because we're changing hands, right? We're changing hands, and they got proprietary rights over us only because we didn't revoke them and say no. So interpretation in this deed, unless context indicates the contrary, headings are for the conveniences only and do not affect interpretation. The singular includes the plural and conversely. The meaning of the general words is not limited by specific examples introduced by including or for example or similar expressions. If a word or a phrase is defined, its grammatical forms have a corresponding meaning. A reference to an agreement or document, including a reference to this deed, is to the agreement or documents as amended, varied, supplemented, novated, or replaced, except to the extent prohibited by this deed or any other agreement document. So this is a continuation. This is a successor to a successor to a successor type thing, right? The expression person includes a natural person, an institution, a body corporate, or an agency or other body. References to any party of this deed will include the party's legal, I stress the word legal successors, including executors and administrators. Okay, so let's get into the meats and bones of this thing here. And let's see here. Let's see. Okay, so this is kind of a repeal of this is the merger basically, and they call it a repeal. And basically, what to do is merging two companies together. But the way the language is, very interesting. So this definitions in this repeal is let's see, a former body means Baker Medical Associate Research Institute established by Baker Medical Research Institute Act of 1989. Liabilities means all liabilities, duties, and obligations, whether actual, contingent, or prospective. New body means Baker IDI Heart and Diabetes Institute Holdings. That's what they merged into, right? Property means any legal or equitable estate or interest, whether present or future, whether vested or contingent, in real or personal property of any description. Rights means all rights, powers, privileges, and immunities, whether actual, contingent, or prospective. And then transferred employee means any employee transferred to the new body by force of this part. So if you think of ourselves as a civil servant, okay, and we transferred a merger to a new body. It's a merger agreement, and remember, they've got to once they steal something from us, once they steal that artificial person for us, it's got daylight somewhere, doesn't it? It has to daylight in another person. But that doesn't make it any right, any more correct than it doesn't make it correct at all. It makes it highly immoral. Anyhow, abolition of the former body and the commencement day. So this is the commencement day of the merger. Excuse me. The former body is abolished, and a person holding office. I remember we talked about when I went to we talked about here, we talked about Jefferson's quote. We talked about where's it? Holding on, it's holding right here. Our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions. That therefore, the prescribing any citizen as unworthy the public confidence by laying upon him an incapacity of being called to office of trust. Okay. So keep that in mind here. So we're talking about here that a person holding office as a member of a former body ceases to hold office and the board is abolished, and a person holding office as a member of the board ceases to hold office, and any committee appointed by the board is abolished. And it says on a commencement day, on a new commencement day, the new body is a successor in law of the former body. See where this is going? And all rights, property, and the assets that immediately before that day were vested in the former body, whether beneficially or as a trustee of any charitable trust or foundation, vest by force of this action in the new body. Like how they do that? Tricky little fucking bastards. All debts, liabilities, and obligations of the former body become by force of this section debts, liabilities, and obligations for the new body. The new body is, by force of this action, substituted as a party to any proceedings pending in any court or tribunal to which the former body was a party immediately before that day. And the new body is, by force of this section, substituted as a party to any arrangement or contract entered into by or on behalf of the former body as a party in force immediately before that day. And the new body is, by force of this section, substituted as the trustee of all trusts, funds, and foundations of which the former body was trustee immediately before that day. And any reference to the former body in any act or any proclamation, order in council, rule, regulation, order, agreement, instrument, deed, will, or other document is, so far as it relates to any period after that date, and if not inconsistent with the context or subject matter, construed as a reference to the new body. Confusing as hell, isn't it? But you see what they're doing here? You see what they're doing, how the manipulation here. This isn't law here. These are rules. Accounts. On and from the commencement day, the new body must ensure that the accounts of the former body for the period starting a couple of days are kept and examined in accordance with the code section here. Transfer of staff. On and from the commencement day, a person employed by the former body immediately before that day, including a person holding office as a result of an appointment by the board under the section of Baker, blah, 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 as enforced immediately before its repeal, is to be taken as A, having been employed by the new body, and having been so employed on the same terms and conditions as those that applied to the person immediately before the commencement day as an employee of the former body. And having accrued an entitlement and benefits in connection with that employment with the new body. That is the equivalent to the entitlement for that person had accrued as an employee of the former body immediately before the commencement day. These bastards. The service of the transferred employee as an employee of the new body is to be taken for all purposes as having been continuous with the service of a transferred employee immediately before the commencement day as an employee of the former body. Now we're talking about not a real person here. We're talking about an artificial person. Okay, that's what we're talking about here, and it's depositing into a new body. Now, future terms and conditions of transferred employees. So it says nothing in Section 7 prevents any of the terms and conditions of employment of a transferred employee from being altered by or under any law, award, or agreements with the effect from any time on or after the commencement day, or a transferred employee from resigning. or the termination of a transferred employee's employment, or at any time on or after the commencement date in accordance with the existing terms and conditions of his or her employment to the new body. That's what we're basically doing. We're opting out of this stuff. We're resigning, right? And then it goes on here to say the validity of things done under this part. Nothing affected on this part or suffered under this part is to be taken as placing any person in breach of contract or confidence or is otherwise exposing the person to civil liability. How can you expose a person to civil liability when the person that you're exploiting doesn't know the fuck's going on? It's kept trade secret. It is to be taken as placing any person in breach of or as constituting a default under any act or law or other law or any provision in any agreement, arrangement, or understanding, including but not limited to any provision prohibiting or restricting the assignment of transfer of any property right or the disclosure of any information. Here we go again. Is to be taken as fully made condition, is to be taken as fulfilling any condition which allows a person to exercise a power, right, or remedy in respect of or to terminate an agreement or obligation, or is to be taken as giving rise to any remedy for a party to a contract or an instrument, or as causing or permitting the termination of any contract or instrument because of a change in the beneficial or legal ownership of any property, right or liability, or is to be taken as causing any contract or instrument to be void or otherwise unenforceable. It is to be taken as frustrating any contract or releases any surety or obligor wholly or in part from any obligation. So let's take a look at that again. So, okay, it says nothing in this part affects any of this stuff. So basically, they're acknowledging it, but it doesn't matter. None of this stuff is affected by that. And then it goes on to say, let's see, going on to here, definitions, it's the same thing there. Abolition of foreign body, and this then it goes to the same thing again. And then one section goes on here, and I think this basically says the same thing, doesn't it? What did it council? Yeah, this is the same thing. It goes in the same thing here. So it goes on for a couple other sections here, but it's saying the same language. Uh, um, And it says here, future terms and conditions. Nothing in this section prevents any of the terms and conditions of employment of a transferred employee from being altered by or under any law, I can talk, award or agreement with effect from any time, from time to time on commencement day, or transferred employee from resigning or termination. Okay, we already read that. Yes, so we already read everything else here. So the language is very interesting with how they use the language here. And that's what they're doing. They're substitute. They're taking that all caps name. It's being considered a body, even though it's not. And it rests in another, goes into another body, into another merger, because that's what this is. It's a merger. And talk about positions of trust and everything. This is what we're excluded from. We weren't appointed to these positions. We didn't have these offices because we're incompetent. We're not allowed to have these offices, and that's what it says in here. But it said, but also, this was Madison quote, I think I said here, or Jefferson quote, where I talked about, yes, Jefferson wrote when he said that, read again, our civil rights have no dependence upon our religious opinions. So this comes out of morals, right? That therefore the prescribing any citizen as unworthy the public confidence by laying upon him an incapacity of being called to offices of trust and emolument in this case, unless he professes or renounces this or that religious opinion, is depriving him injuriously of those privileges and advantages to which, in common with his fellow citizens, he has a natural right. There you have it. There you have it. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be probably real confusing for people, and it is. I mean, this is a whole different language you're listening that you're talking about here. You're talking about contracts and agreements from all different countries, and in this case, they're really honing in on the language. Um, and using body as being the new merged entity and everything, and so this is important because this takes us out of the legalese that we're talking about here is overseas now. So this is why, and this applies to our foreign the foreign body, right? The foreign body is that all caps name, which has been made foreign from us, alienated from us, right? And so this is where we're going to get into. So this is where you get to start to really try to understand and try to assimilate in your mind what that all caps name means. And this is just kind of an idea, gives you an idea of the metaphysics here. There's a lot of work here. There's a lot of work here, and hopefully I can kind of be of assistance to kind of get people get in their mind, get an understanding what we're talking about here. Because I tell you, it's real important. It's real important. We can't, we need to know what's going on here. We can't be in the dark anymore. We've been in the dark for too fucking long, and it's time to take back our rights. And we can do that. We've got to come to an understanding on this stuff. And hopefully I can help you do that. But anyhow, that's all I got for tonight. I'm going to bed now. That's 5 or 6 episodes. Today was enough. Share, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you later.